Hello everybody, Silentwisher here with a brand new Company of Heroes 2 World Builder tutorial or World Editor tutorial. This is going to be start to finish. The editing is going to be very minimal, so that way you guys can understand how to get going when it comes to map making. Some things you can expect from this is just how to use the tools. I'm not going to cover every single tool, but most of them. And we may, I might make a map that ends up being published. I might not, but the whole point of this series is to teach you how to use the tools so you can go ahead and make a map for whatever you want. So once you have this open, by the way, you can find this in the root directory of your game installation. I created a shortcut for it on my desktop so I can easily get into it, but that's how you find it. So once you have it open, we're going to hit File up here at the top, New Multiplayer Map, and it's going to open up, it should open up your Documents folder. And just for my recommendation, I recommend saving it where the majority of this stuff goes. And I'm currently navigating to it now. So it'll be Documents, My Games, Company Heroes 2, Mods, Scenarios, and then you can create a folder. In this case, Tutorial Map. Make sure there's no spaces in the title or in the folder name. If you want to do spaces, you can experiment with that, but I don't recommend it. And then you can name the SGB file if you want, otherwise just hit save. And then you'll get this new prompt that says new scenario. From here, we're going to do a blank terrain. And for new users, new people, I recommend starting with something very small. And I also recommend checking this generate starting positions. This is a fairly new feature. This wasn't always here before. So make sure your game is up to date and everything. But we're just going to leave everything at default here. Now, the reason I recommend new people use the generate starting positions is, well, in this case, it says the map is too small. So hold on. We're going to go to a map of 512 by 512. And I don't care about making an outside border, like a pretty outside of the screen. So we'll just set it to max. Now, as you can see, it generated some starting items that you need in order for the map to successfully save, compile, and be playable. So this would be a 2-player map, and I'm going to explain what's going on here in just a moment. So first, what we're going to do, and this is something you should do very regularly, is save. Make sure you save your map file. Now, let's talk about these objects here that it generated for us. If you go up here to the top of your screen, there's an object placement button. If you click on that, that's how we gain access to the information to these and stuff like that. So what the map did when it generated is it created a map entry point, it created a starting position, and it created a starting territory team point, basically, capture point. And what this does is it creates, one for each player. Since it's a 2-player map, each side has all the necessary items here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these, and just for the sake of keeping them separated, I'm going to move them away from each other. I'm going to hit save just to be sure. This world editor does crash a lot, so be prepared for that and make sure you save often. Okay, so next I'm going to go up to the territory button here. It says territory editor. If you click that, it's going to turn really bright colors. And then I'm going to go over here to the right and click calculate. And that's just going to update the terrain, or I'm sorry, update the territory to reflect where we moved these positions. Okay. And I'm actually going to switch back to the object placement and move these in front of the bases. And once again, switch back over to the territory, click calculate. Okay, I'm going to hit save. Okay, So now when you switch back to another tool, you're going to notice this doesn't go away. It's just a layer, an overlay. So you go up here, you click overlay, and it'll switch it back to the normal view. Now, technically, without anything else, this map is playable. You could save this map, we could export this map, and we could play it. But why? What's the point, right? So we're gonna jump into doing some little things here and there. Okay. So first, let's talk about the height map editor, which is up here. You click on the height map editor, and there's different modes. There's additive, which means it's gonna go up. Subtractive, which means it's gonna go down. Set value means it's gonna create terrain at that exact value, which I will show you. See, it's exactly at that value. Versus subtractive makes a hole, additive makes a tower, but not necessarily, like the set value. And then you can have your right mouse button be like a smoothing, so that way you can smooth these things out or just get rid of them. So that's the height map. Now you can use the height map to, let's actually just give you an example here. We'll just make this terrain a little more interesting looking, just for the sake of the tutorial here. Okay. Pretty happy with that. Okay, so I'm going to hit save. Now, let's talk about the, where are we going here? We're going to talk about the texture tool. So we're going to click on this thing that says tile up here in the top. Now you're going to notice there is a lot of different options here on the right hand side. Just something to keep in mind, there is a limit on how many textures you can have on your map, and usually I only have a handful, like 5 at most, sometimes 6, because there's other ways you can place textures without using this tool. So we'll get to that at some point. But first, you're going to see the grass base here. We're going to open up this preview window by hitting the preview button, and we're going to find a grass texture here that's a little more. Actually, I'm going to leave it as it is. I'm going to create a new layer with this button. You're going to see it's pink. And then we're going to make this new layer actual grass. I just got to find one that I like. I'm very picky with these textures, so give me just a moment. Okay. So now that I have the grass picked, I'm going to make sure the layer is selected. And I'm going to increase the brush size and everything. And then I'm just going to paint where I want the grass, okay? So I'm going to zoom out here a little bit. This is quick and dirty because, like I said, this tutorial is meant to teach you how to use the tools, so that way you can spend the few minutes, few hours, few days, whatever it may be, to make the map of your dreams, whatever you're thinking of. So painted some grass, right? While we're here, I'll teach you how I paint my my cliff sides. So I'm going to create another layer. Go down here, and then I'm going to go to Stone Natural, I believe. Yep. And then select outcropping, hit assign, make sure that layer is selected. We're going to turn down the brush here. And then basically where there's sharp siding of terrain, I just put the rocks. And just like that, that has some rock texture to it. It doesn't have to be perfect. Nature isn't perfect. Nobody's perfect. And just do something like that. Oops. If you ever want to reset your camera, you can hit the backspace twice. Otherwise, you can rotate it with holding down Alt and you're moving your mouse around. Double backspace to return. Okay. We're going to hit save because it's been a minute. I'm going to take a sip of our drink. Very good. Okay. Now, let's talk about some more gameplay stuff. Go back to the object placement tool here, and we're going to go to the first section, EBPS, and then gameplay. Whoops. Gameplay. Okay. Let's try this again. Gameplay. There we go. Now, we're going to go to a territory point. Actually, we're going to go to a victory point, and let me explain why. So victory points, if you're not familiar, there's a game mode that allows you to capture a point. It ticks down an overall pool of points, and then whoever takes, holds the most points at the end wins, basically. When you're not in the victory point mode, however, when these points are existing in your map file, they just get converted to a regular territory point. So it's a dual purpose sort of situation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create one here. Oops. One there and one there. Okay. And remember, these will turn into normal territory points if they're not in territory point, the game mode. Now I'm going to select territory fuel point. And I'm going to place one there and one over here. And then we're going to look for the munitions point momentarily. Where is it? There it is. Territory munitions point. See how many times I can scroll by it, right? Place one there. And place one here. Okay. Now we're going to go back to our territory editor here. We're going to hit calculate. And as you can see, it kind of generates a mess, right? And in some situations, that's okay. In this situation, I'm going to leave it as is, but I want to show you how you can manipulate this in ways that you would actually want it, right? So let's say I want this pink territory, for example, to not touch this mountain. We're going to hold control and left click on it. It's going to turn it white. We're going to adjust the brush size over here. I'm sorry, we're going to actually control click on this one, and we're going to just paint that over. Okay, and that makes it for this territory. Now, since this is selected, it's really hard to see, especially with the current lighting we have. But if you look closely, we do have a white texture here, and each one of the territories has this. That is the capture, well, except for the starting point. But anyways, that is the capture circle for when infantry or whatever vehicles that can capture points have to be in that circle. So if we hold control and we click on that, we can make that larger if we want. That's personal preference. And then I want to show you, if you want to paint null, you can click paint null, and then you can go like this, and it allows you to just paint out areas you don't want there to be territory. Now, I also want to show you another issue. As you map and you do territories, you're going to see things like this happen. And sometimes you might not even see it. It might be hidden underneath a prop or a tree or whatever. This is not good. This will not let your map function properly, and it should throw an error for you when you're trying to compile it. So basically when this happens, all you have to do is convert isolated territory to null. And it's going to say, are you sure? And you say yes. And now that's no longer an error that you're going to be seeing. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and go back here. We're going to turn off the territory layer here. And your editor might look kind of like this. If you want to turn off the fog, you can turn it off here. Okay. We're going to hit save because it's been a while. Excuse me. We're going to reset our camera here and kind of get a feel for what we got going on. Looks good, looks good. So let's do a little recap of what we got going on here. We have the 2 starting territories. We have a munitions and a fuel point for each side of the map, and 2 territory control points. Victory points. That could also be just the regular capture points. And we have, some terrain and stuff. But let's say you've been sculpting terrain, right? And you're having a good time, and you want to know if maybe infantry or vehicles or just anything can get up onto this. This is a tool that most people don't know about. What we're going to do is we're going to hit overlay, and then we're going to hit regenerate impasse only. And what that's going to do is it's going to show you where units can be and if they can access something, right? So as you can see here, none of these hills, from what I can tell, are actually accessible. Now, if you had paratroopers and you dropped them up here, they would be able to be up here in certain places. But for the most part, they can't get up here. So what you would have to do is go back to your terrain and kind of smooth things out more and try to, make it a little more accessible if you wanted it to be. So if we go back up here to overlay, and we do regenerate impasse, oh, look at that. Our terrain is now accessible. So you can also use this as a way to get an idea if props are blocking the path of say a bridge or something like that. And then I'm trying to remember toggle overlay. There we go. And that turns it off. And then we're going to hit save again. So let's talk about some other tools while we're here. We're going to talk about the water placement, which is important. So we're going to first, believe it or not, switch back to the height map editor, and we're going to create an area for the water. So we're just going to select a brush size, and it doesn't look like we're doing much right now, but we are, and that's basically the bottom of the map, it looks like. So now we're going to click on the water tool. We're going to right click, and it should spawn some water, right? In order to adjust the height of this, you're going to hold the H key and bring it up. Now see, if you bring it up too much, your whole map's covered in water. We don't want that. So you got to make sure it's where you want it. And water is that simple. Boom, you got a pond. Now obviously you would want to texture this up, maybe add some mud and stuff like that around it, but that's how you create water. Now, let's say you come back to this and you're like, I want to make this an actual river, and you come through here and you do that. You don't have to place another water module. All you have to do is go to here, hit update, and it'll update it. Now, if you have multiple rivers that aren't connected and stuff, you'd have to put a water module in each, but that's how that works, okay? What else can we cover in this video? Let's look at the grass editor real quick. Most people don't mess with this because it can be obnoxious if done improperly. But just for the sake of it, if you select it and you paint, or you select grass meadow, for example, you can paint some grass. You can paint crushed, you can paint burnt, normal. You can adjust the brush size, you can do wheat. There's not a lot of them, but at least you have the ability to change them. And of course you can sync all the blade heights, and you can do all kinds of stuff here just by opening these up, okay? So that's grass. This can't be used for snow. The snow is going to be done, I believe, in the ice editor or the terrain. We'll come back to, yeah, it's done in the terrain editor. So we'll come back to that in a later video. Next, let's skim through these because I don't remember them all off the top of my head. Okay. Let's go to entities, and then we'll go to environment, art nature, or art ambient rather. Nope, art nature, that's what I wanted. Trees L, which is trees large, and we'll just select, we want a grove, which is like a lot of them. We're going to use random rotation. Whoa, those ones are broken. Okay, we're not going to use those. Let's try some fall pines. Nope, that's a singular one. Grove. There we go. And with just a couple clicks, we got a whole bunch of them. Now, you want to be sparing with this, obviously. But a lot of the times, these become blockers for vision. So infantry or tanks can't see through them or shoot through them, depending on the thickness, depending on the prop and stuff. But let's say we just, I don't know, let's go to, what's this? Let's say we place a hedge. That's a pretty tall one. That's a tall one too. Come on, work with me here. There we go. Okay. Let's say we want this hedge to block player's view. Now, there's ways we would, you wouldn't want to do this because this is a destroyable prop, but this is just for the sake of explaining the tool, okay? So what you're going to do is go into EBPS, and then you're going to go into gameplay, I believe. And then you have these line of sight blockers, okay, which does exactly what it sounds like. And then there should be a movement blocker. Should be a combo, and it's movement blocker, sight, shot block. So that's basically, it blocks everything. So if you wanted this to be something that they can't shoot through, see through, etc., you could set those up like this, and these won't be visible in game, but this will create, a visual block and everything. So that's how that works. And sometimes you have to do that for certain props or buildings and whatnot. It's just something you're gonna have to experiment with. Okay. I think that's all we're gonna cover in this video. Actually, one more thing. We're gonna cover the spline tool, and this could be used for props, terrain, textures. I use it for mainly textures and props, but you can do it with terrain as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to select texture, and then we're going to come down here to, let's say, we don't want craters, we want a ditch. Turn the texture preview on. And we're going to do a trench floor. Okay. We're going to come back up here and make sure this gets turned on because sometimes it doesn't. And then we're going to place this trench floor like this. What I did is I right clicked it, and you have to have at least 4 points. We hit enter. We come up here and we have some options. We're going to set to optimum width, which is pretty small. Then there's preset width, and then you can always adjust it as well. We're going to set it to optimum. Now we're going to hit, deselect it, and we can move this around, which is pretty cool, right? Now if we hit space while it's selected, we can select and manipulate the various points. We can even extend this if we want. Okay, so that's how you do splines. Let's do this with some objects so you can see what I'm talking about too, because the objects is a little bit different. So we're going to come down here. We're going to go to environment, and then our ambient objects, and then walls, and we'll do wood. We'll just do a fence 0, 1. So once you have it, unfortunately there's no preview, so you're going to have to experiment with this. Fence 0, 1, add object to list. I'm going to hit align, and we're going to hit wall mode, and we have to turn it on up here. I know that's a lot. And then same thing, we're going to place some points, and just like that we have a fence. So we don't have to place each and every single little tiny fence, because look at that, that's a whole bunch of props you would have to do by hand, and nobody wants to do that, right? and then you just adjust it. There you go. And you can actually combine these together if you really want. So like if you were creating a trench, for example, you could use, this in combination with deform and texture, and then you could come in with a second pass and put up the trench walls. There's a lot of options here. So that's how all that works. If there's anything in particular, I keep almost ending it. We're gonna come up to scenario properties. Here you can change the map name. There's music, all that stuff. Atmosphere properties. This is where your lighting is. This is something you're gonna have to play with. You can always open up a company here's existing map, like from the game, and copy, from there, or you can hit this load button and steal a lighting of your choice, basically. Let's just show you an example. Let's do, I don't know. We'll just do a random one, I suppose. We'll do this one. Press OK. We're going to import all the things we want. Hit OK. And there you go. It's darker. It looks like it's snowing. So there's that. And then there's other things like terrain properties that you can change. All that stuff is done up here. Teams you don't really have to mess with unless you want to. Of course, everything you can do is, up to you, of course, if that makes any sense. Something you want to keep in mind, though, is overlay show playable area. Now, I made the map to where it goes all the way up to the edge, but if you had like that buffer, this is where the camera would be stopped in game, and units couldn't go past here and all that stuff. So that's what that is. So yeah, that's just about the majority of this. So what we're gonna do is, let's say this is a done project. We're gonna save. We want to do that regularly, right? Then we're gonna hit File and then Export Package. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna compile the map and export it. So from here, what you would do is, if you wanted to distribute that file manually, you could by going to your your documents and all that stuff. But what you would actually want to do, just for the sake of simplicity, is open up your game and go to the mod screen, the modding hub screen, and then you can publish it to the Steam Workshop, and then that way your friends or whatever can play it from there. I can do a separate video on that if you like. Just let me know in the comments below. But other than that, that's basically a map from start to finish as far as functionality goes. And then, of course, if you want me to cover any other tools, let me know. Thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful, and I will see you guys in the next video.